X-Men on film has had quite a legacy. Ever since that eventful summer of 2000, the X-Men films have helped shape not only the superhero comic book genre, but films in general. Yeah, today Dark Phoenix comes out on Blu-ray, and it's the end of an era. There are many highs and lows within the X-Men series, but I must say, having this retrospective, thinking about the films, they are very important to the comic book industry, to the genre on film. Now, many would argue that Men in Black and Blade helped break ground with comic books on film. Before that, with the first wave of Batman '89, Superman the movie. But I think it wasn't until X-Men and Spider-Man were released back to back that superheroes started to break new ground in film. I think the MCU, the DCEU films, most of the comic book superhero films would not be made without the success of X-Men in 2000 or its sequel from 2003. Now, you may say this series suffers from what other comic book movies suffer from. People behind the scenes not really getting what the characters are about, wanting to make it for money, overstuffing it with characters, for franchising. But I think the X-Men films brought a grounded approach to storytelling. Sure, they weren't 100% like the comics, but they took the material seriously. X-Men in the wrong hands could have easily been another steal with Shaquille O'Neal. But with Bryan Singer, with 20th Century Fox, it was a grounded approach and a realistic approach to X-Men. Actors that gave it gravitas like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Famke Janssen, James Marsden, and helped start the career of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Would it have been the same if they got a short Wolverine like in the comics? No. A lot of people were upset at his height. He was too tall, but you know what? He is Wolverine. I've always been a fan of films that pay homage or have been 100% accurate to the comics, but I'm also open to new interpretations. I'm also open to adaptations, a translation, Not too loose, just enough to where it makes something on its own and brings us something new that we haven't seen before. Something we did not know we needed, and X-Men did that. I remember my father and I went to go see it on opening weekend. I was a fan of the Fox Kids show, and this film changed my life. They gave away a Toys R Us comic book with the first issue of Ultimate X-Men. I love this film. Statue of Liberty scene, a whole bunch of stuff. You could check out my review on it on my channel. But I love the first X-Men. It changed ground. But it didn't have it as crazy as the sequels, It was a bit more of an intimate film, a little bit more personal. Brought us Wolverine's perspective, introducing us to the X-Men through his eyes. You have Rogue there. Ian McKellen as his Holocaust survivor. It still had the certain themes about civil rights and freedom, much like the comic books, And X2 is really the film that was like the first all-out X-Men movie. This is a sequel that shows no, this is going somewhere, and that's what X-Men's like. The first one's almost like a test. The second one, they weren't afraid. They went all out of a full X-Men movie, and I love the second one. It blew me away, collecting Diet Dr. Pepper cans and stuff. Yeah, that movie was amazing. And it seemed like every other sequel was amazing after that, We had Blade 2 right before X-Men 2. Then we had Spider-Man 2. Nothing could stop Marvel. And then we had the series of bad third films. X-Men Last Stand had a lot of production issues behind the scenes. And while it wasn't as good as the first two, it did do a lot right. It did have certain style and just kind of images from the comic books. It was a bit more faithful to some degree, but it just really did damage to the characters. That went to studio interference with X-Men Origins Wolverine, wanting to put every single mutant in a Wolverine movie instead of just focusing on Wolverine. Luckily, they started paying attention to directors and their visions. James Mangold did a fantastic job with the Wolverine, and then Logan is a magnum opus. We also had X-Men First Class, and after Last Stand and Origins Wolverine, I was kind of out of X-Men. First Class reignited my fandom for the series. Matthew Vaughn did a fantastic job. Perhaps Bryan Singer wanted to take credit for it too with Days of Future Past. That was great. And then Apocalypse, I love it, but it was a step down, as well as Dark Phoenix. And despite its highs, this series does have its lows. A lot of that could be put to the studio, to Simon Kinberg, who was a writer and a producer of these films. He wrote and directed Dark Phoenix, so he kind of did damage to the Dark Phoenix saga not once but twice. And Yeah, that explains a lot because I was like, well, he also wrote Days of Future Past, but with the help of Bryan Singer and Matthew Vaughn's story. He was a sole writer of X-Men Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix, so yeah. This studio, I think, was going to go somewhere with the X-Men series. They were starting to experiment. We have yet to see the release of New Mutants. It was going to be more of a horror film. But it just saddens me that they basically decided to reshoot the movie because it was too close to Captain Marvel. I think Disney did a job where it was almost like Justice League for Warner Brothers on this last X-Men. And the film's nowhere near as bad as what people say, but it's kind of crazy to see the legacy of this series go from the first X-Men to Dark Phoenix. Now, I know a lot of people are going to want to see these characters done right, but do I want to see X-Men crack jokes every 5 minutes like the Avengers in the MCU? No, I don't. I'm going to miss these films. I think they could do a good job in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think they're going to miss something. They're going to miss the grounded, realistic, kind of more dramatic approach of these films, the emotional weight of these films. Unless they prove me wrong, I just feel that way right now. And despite its flaws, the highs and lows, I think without this series of films, our modern superhero climate would be very different. People wouldn't take it seriously. People wouldn't want to experiment with other characters from the X-Men, from Marvel, if it wasn't for the success of the first film and the sequels. And it's kind of rare to have a film series last almost 20 years, you know? I think it would have lasted longer if it wasn't for Disney buying out Fox, but it's interesting. Any series kind of goes down. TV shows dwindle in quality, but you know, this film series did a lot right. It had so many great moments, and I'm going to terribly miss the X-Men series from Fox. It is truly the end of an era, brought us many great characters, many mess-ups that were later on made fun of. So, taking account into everything, I love the X-Men films, and I will miss them. I'm going to complete them on Blu-ray, and yeah, I grew up with these movies, man. You know, I was 9 years old when I saw the first X-Men, and now I'm 28, so that's most of my life, onto adult life now, that I've seen these films so far. And we'll have to see what the future brings us, but I think despite all the criticisms, all the nitpicking, all the complaints over these films and Fox, I think people should appreciate these films more. I really do. So I'm just going to leave it at that with this legacy retrospective of the X-Men. Let me know your X-Men memories. Were you a fan of the Fox series? Were you just mad that it wasn't like the comics? Are you excited for the MCU X-Men? Just let me know down in the comments below. But most of all, share your memories of the X-Men films. Ever since the first one on to now, share your memories of what you love the most about these Fox X-Men films. I like to read them. You can follow me on the Stardust app at Fred Film Fanatic, and you can check out these other X-Men related videos on my channel. Feel free to subscribe for more and hit that bell for more notifications. Till next time, bub.